Hello there guys, and welcome to Mad Doc Minis. In this video I'm going to be doing some conversion work on the Centurion warsuits. Now these are quite divisive, a lot of people hate them, a lot of people love them. I actually like a lot about the Centurions. I think the concept is really cool. There's just a few things that aesthetically kind of bug me, and I'm going to try and fix a couple of those in this video. So stay tuned guys if you're interested in what I do. The first thing I do is to build up the Centurion legs exactly as they're supposed to be put together, minus the armoured skirts which go on the front. I do a couple of different things with these, as you'll see later in the video, but for now, those get left off. You could, of course, lengthen out the legs if you wanted to with some more serious conversion work, but it's not really for me. I want to keep this very simple, and I quite like the look of the legs as is, to be honest, so I'm going to leave those alone. Similarly, the torso is going to remain mostly unaltered for this conversion. I'm not really going to do anything directly with it, but I will show you now how it's supposed to sit on top of the legs. It tends to sit very low, and I think contributes heavily to the Centurion's very square silhouette. That's very iconic, and you may love that. I don't. I want it to look taller and more humanoid, so I'm going to work on that aspect. So I mashed together some milliput. This is a similar conversion to what I've done in the past with my Primaris upscaling stuff. So you'll probably know where I'm kind of going with this, but I truly think this works quite well for the Centurion. It's got the bulk to carry this off. So I roll a little pea-sized ball or sphere and mash that on top of the legs into a kind of gumdrop shape, as you see here. And then the torso gets pushed down on top of that lightly, creating something of a muffin top out the sides. Now normally, for regular infantry, I would tidy that up and smooth it out. In the Centurion's case, I'm going to leave that alone because it tends to kind of fill in an awkward gap between the torso and the legs there, and looks absolutely fine when it's painted up. So I'm going to let that muffin top exist in this case. It's a good idea with milliput to check it at regular intervals as it dries. It takes a long time to set, and the thing can drift around a little bit. The torso can slip forwards, it can go sideways and alter the posture of the miniature. So check it regularly to make sure you're ending up with the miniature that you want. Whilst I had the milliput on the go, I put a very small amount into the neck socket in order to increase the height of the head. Now I'm using these aggressor helmets in this case because I want these Centurions to slot nicely into my Primaris force, but you of course could use any head you like. I really do like the original helmets for the Centurions. I think they're really aggressive looking, and I'm definitely going to put them in my bits box for a project further on down the road. But for now, I'm using these aggressor helmets. And that gives us another couple of millimeters of height, which really helps the overall proportions of the miniature, I think. Once the milliput was fully set, I reinforced all the joins with plenty of super glue because milliput is not an adhesive. The miniature otherwise would just simply break apart over time. You need to reinforce it with plenty of super glue, guys, for it to work. With the main conversion work for the body done, which is the same across all the Centurions in this video, I then moved on to the different weapon options. Heavy bolters were first on the shopping list. I've never liked the look of the heavy bolters for the Centurions. I always thought the magazines were too clumsy looking and low slung, so I chopped those off where they meet the body of the heavy bolter, and you end up with the magazine and the heavy bolter separately. Now I alter the magazine here. You can see I've made a couple of cuts. You just need to create a nice right angle section here, so like a little hollow. Now I used a sharp blade to shave that down and create that shape. Once that was done, I tidied up the side of the heavy bolter to create a smooth surface, just filing down and shaving down some of the details on the side. And once that's been done, you're ready to glue the magazine back on. The magazine is essentially going to wrap around the heavy bolter for a more compact design, like so. Now I will show you a comparison between the modified one and the unmodified one. So here I'm just using a bit of glue to fill in some gaps. You may want to use plastic cement as it's superior for that purpose. But the one on the left is the altered one, the one on the right is the unaltered one, and you can see it's a lot more compact and I think better looking. But let me know what you guys think. Once all that was done, the heavy bolters got attached to the arms and the arms got attached to the Centurion with no conversion work. Easy peasy, job done. Now, the servo harness thing that goes over the top of the shoulders, I needed to alter that because I want to do something different with the pauldrons later on. Now, I get rid of these cylindrical attachment points for the pauldrons here because I don't want them to sit flat and horizontal. I want them to sit at a bit of an angle. So they just get chopped off for now. I do different things for this part of the conversion later on, as you'll see, but in this case, I just got rid of them. And that then gets glued on top where it's supposed to go. I'll come back to the pauldrons a bit later on, but next up is the armoured skirts, which go on the front of the kind of groin and leg area. Now, that's what they look like. Now, I never really liked the look of these other Centurions because they kind of lend that very kind of squat look. It just doesn't work for me. So what I decided to do was to chop off one of the side armoured plates, like so, and tidy that up behind, just, shave it down a little bit on the kind of rear aspect there. And once you've tidied that up, you end up with this really neat little armoured plate, which can be put just under the belt as a kind of groin guard. Now, you'll see what I mean. It just goes on there like that, and that really transforms the look of the Centurion. For such an easy thing to do, it really gives that visual cheat of the legs looking much longer than they otherwise would have done if you'd created that kind of look with the armoured skirts. I think it's a must-do for me. It really enhances the look. So now, coming back to the pauldrons, a bit tricky this, in all honesty. You've got a little bit of jiggery-pokery to do to get the angle that you want, and you need to kind of take advantage of any kind of contact points you can here. You may want to use a little bit of milliput, a ball of milliput underneath to give you some substructure to glue these two. But for now, I just glued them on like this. This is what I was doing at this stage when I was doing these first ones. So plenty of super glue, a little bit of jiggery-pokery to get the alignment right, and we've got nicely angled pauldrons. Again, it's something you may prefer not to do. The nice thing about this conversion is each step is really optional. You can drop what you don't like. Nothing relies on anything else, really. You know what I mean? But here I'm just reinforcing any attachment point I can to give those pauldrons more purchase. Next up, as a final flourish, I decide to attach a helmet crest, in this case one from Spellcrow, but you could use the Mark III crest or the Mark VI crest if you've got any lying around. And I just love the idea of having that Centurion-inspired crest on top of the Centurion. It just seems to beg for it to me. And it actually increases the overall height of the miniature and the stature. It's, again, another visual cheat, and I really like the look of these on top. So happy days. And yeah, I really like these Spellcrow ones. They're quite big and ostentatious, which I think is appropriate for these enormous walking warsuits. So a direct comparison now between an unaltered one. This is an older Centurion of mine, which I put together as they were supposed to go. You can see quite a significant increase in height. So I'm really happy with the overall difference in the look. I think they look more humanoid. The proportions, I think, look better. I'm just really, really happy with how they turned out. So I wanted to do this comparison now because I'm not going to have it later on, because I'm actually going to break these old Lascanon ones apart and convert those too. So because I use super glue, I can do that. I just snap them apart. They're years old, but they will just snap apart and I can convert them as I want to. All the conversion work was mostly the same for the body, but with the Lascanons, I decided to alter those. Now, I get rid of these cables underneath. I know they're iconic for Lascanons, but I don't like them. They look too low slung to me, and it's just too busy. I don't like lots and lots of cables everywhere, so I got rid of those. What I did was just modify underneath as well with that kind of strut that goes underneath the barrel. I'm just really making the Lascanons look a little bit more streamlined. They just look too busy. I'm using a kind of adhesive gem thing here just to stick on the bottom of a awkward flat area underneath the Lascanon, just to fill in some gap. And then I also use a spare frag launcher, which normally goes in the chest of the Centurion. And I chop that down a little bit and alter it. And once I've kind of, flatten that off at the back with the attachment pins and all the rest of it, that gets glued on underneath the Lascanon just to add a little bit of detail and fill it in a little bit. Just makes it look a little bit better in my view. And I need to create a little bit of space on the bottom of the Lascanon with a sharp knife, and once that's been done, on that goes. And that just, I don't know, it just finishes it off nicely. It doesn't look as awkward as just having the thing chopped up and flat as it was before. And that is the work done for the Lascanon, really, just a bit of streamlining work. For the assault Centurions, I go in completely the opposite direction, go for something really oversized and silly. Now I use these drywall plugs. These are kind of screw-in drywall anchors, and they're actually metal, but you can get smaller ones and you can get plastic ones. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing here. This is just what I had lying around. Now I create a better tip on these because there's an awkward hole at the top, and I just really fashion a better tip with some milliput and just kind of mold that into the rough shape and get what I want out of that, just to make it look nicer. Now I'm very aware these are going to look really silly and probably stupid even, but I love it. So I really don't like those kind of grinder things that come with the Centurions. Never have done, actually. I always thought they looked really awkward, and these are definitely going to look awkward, but they're also going to look cool in my view anyway. But let me know what you think, guys, when you see the finished results. But yeah, they are definitely a bit oversized, so don't worry, I'm aware of that. So yeah, after I've done the work on the milliput there and kind of shaved it down and got the shape I want, those actually glue on to the original, like the kind of the component that goes underneath the arm that would normally hold the drill. I actually used those components, and that glued onto there with no drama at all. Just a bit of super glue, and they went on there just like it was meant to happen. It was just really nice to have something come together so easily for a change. And that's the kind of look that we ended up with. So yeah, definitely over the top. But remember, you can get smaller ones. Now for the armoured skirts, I decided that I wanted to try and go with the original armoured skirts more on this one, because they're kind of close combat troops. It made sense to me that they'd have like extra armour for the, you know, for the crucible of close combat. So what I did was just bend them a little bit, because remember, we've altered the height of the Centurion and it won't sit as nicely on there. So I just bent them with my fingers and then put them higher up. And actually attaching them higher up really helps the whole thing. It means that you don't have that funny squat look to the thing. So, you know, this is definitely an option. If you wanted to keep the armoured skirts, you could do this for all of your Centurions if you wanted. I really wanted to show you this alternative way of attaching the pauldrons, which is definitely the way to go, using a ball of milliput. I did mention it earlier on. I learnt this as I was doing these, and it's definitely the better way, because it just adds something underneath to attach them to and allows you to maneuver them in the right place more freely. It's definitely the way to do it, guys. So just a FYI on that one. Now, next up, we've got these. These are my very first Centurions, and you can see I've converted them to have flexible ammo feeds from Zinj Industries, which are superb, actually, incidentally. And because I've already done a conversion for the heavy bolter magazine, I wanted to do something different with these, so I'm going to turn them into assault cannons. I'm using these Stormhawk Interceptor assault cannons. There are many places you can get assault cannons from. I just happen to have enough of these in my bits box to make this work for 3 of them. But there's loads of places you can source assault cannons from, guys. So it's just trying to provide a bit of inspiration, really. And I fully appreciate you may not have the same bits floating around. But I just cut those off where the barrel meets the main body on the gun and shave that down with a sharp knife. And I'm going to need to also cut down the heavy bolter on the Centurion warsuit. And I've got this little arch section here in the heavy bolter on the side. I just use that as a guide and cut about halfway through that with the hobby clip. So no finesse at all. That just comes off and then gets shaved down afterwards with the sharp blade. And that's really just going to attach directly onto that area. The barrel's going to get glued straight on there, and that essentially is the conversion, or at least the main part of it. So a little bit of attention to detail, to alignment here, because if it's going off at a little bit of an angle, it is one of those things that will tend to catch the eye. And I certainly had to do a couple of different alterations along the way to get that right. Once that was all done, the body got attached onto the legs as per the original conversion work at the beginning of the video. No changes there. And then I decided I wanted to bulk out the back end, because you've got this awkward little gap here at the back. So I cut that out a little bit more with the sharp blade just to create a bigger hollow. And I actually fashioned a component from the leftovers of the assault cannons. You can see here it's like a vent section. I just cut out a little box, almost, kind of the shape of it. And I just glued that into place. And once that's all painted up, that looks fairly natural there. It just kind of helps to bulk out the back end of the weapon and make it look more, I don't know, realistic, really. So yeah, happy days. And that's the assault cannon conversion. Last and certainly not least is these. I wanted to make some knight-inspired Centurions, so I shaved off a lot of the detail off the chest and off the arms and the legs, and I used a grey knight's helmet. I know that's quite iconic. You may want to choose a different head. That's just, you know, optional thing. I used some components from the grav cannons here and cut off the muzzle and decided to create a kind of sword coming out from this section underneath the arm. Now, the biggest power swords that I had available were these grey knight swords. I would have liked something bigger, quite frankly, but I just didn't have it. So until I get something that's more suitable, these will do for now, because I can always just snap these off and attach something later on. But I just cut kind of underneath the hilt here, as you can see, and then just kind of like tidy it up and shave it down and attach that directly onto the grav cannon kind of body, I guess. So you can see at the top here, I've ended up with a bit of an angle. I just need to trim that down a little bit, so I kind of maintain that little cable going in to the side. That adds a nice little bit of detail, and just kind of shave it down nice and flat and then glue it onto the centre of that component. Once that was done, I set about attaching the right arm onto the body of the Centurion and discovered that if we were putting the arm on where it was supposed to go, the sword hung too low beyond the base, as you can see here. That happens from time to time on these kind of conversions. It happened a little bit with the assault drills as well. I just attached the arm at a different angle to compensate, and that worked out fine. I then shaved down the other half of the grav cannon, which goes underneath the left arm at the front end here, and attached these melter barrels on the front. Kind of, I guess that's creating a multi-melter essentially, isn't it? So that's going to go under the left arm, and that arm gets attached onto the Centurion. And after that, I use a little tilt shield from the Grey Knight's kit, the Terminator's kit, and I put that on the outside of the right arm, just on the weapon attachment underneath. That's going to give me a chance to put some heraldry on this thing and make it look more like a knight, which is kind of what I'm going for these this last variant. And then I use a bigger shield from the Imperial Knight's kit to put onto the left arm, and I think that looks really juicy. That's just really nice. They're kind of begging for this, the Centurions, I think. And there we go, that's my kind of my knight version. So I'm going to throw these up on a rotating platform now, guys, and let me know what you think. But if you enjoyed the content, please consider liking and sharing, and if you're not already subscribed, consider giving us a sub. Thanks very much.